All right, we get it rolling on the Krueg Show. Hope everybody's having a phenomenal day. It is September the 26th, 6:35 on the West Coast, 9:35 on the East Coast. Back by popular demand, the great David Lombardi, who's a great follow on Twitter, and he does a great job covering the 49ers for The Athletic, along with Matt Barrows. And he is with us to chop it up on all things Niners. Dave, good to see you. How you doing?
Said popular demand. They didn't want to kick me out after the first time, or
no, people were loving the stream and were saying, "Hey, get Dave back on, and here you go. And we got a bunch of people in the chat already, and people can fire away with their questions. We'll take a few from the chat as we go, but yeah, it's always good to wrap with you, man. And we're talking about a 3-0 football team in what promises to be maybe one of the most exciting years covering this team.
Yeah, and now I think the betting markets may actually have the 49ers as Super Bowl favorites. I look at some of the different analytic models, and it is a split between the Chiefs and the 49ers is the highest probability for the Super Bowl here after week 3. So, yes, it's early, but we try to project stuff. We just try to see what the chances are, and the chances are very real for the 49ers to go all the way this year. A lot still has to happen. Even the most optimistic model only has them at like an 18 or 19% chance to win it all, but the Chiefs are just right around there. It's hard to win a Super Bowl is the point. You can have Mahomes and the probability still isn't on your side. It's still not going to be a greater than 50% chance this early in the season. So the 49ers have just as good of a shot as anyone right now, and I think that lends itself to us having a fun season covering this team.
No doubt. It's gonna be a fun year, and I titled the stream "Could the 49ers deal with Denver be looming?" And I really, I woke up this morning and I flipped it over to Mark DeLucci at Niners Nation, and he's got an article out about how Patrick Surtain's father kind of sounded off on Twitter. Saying to his son, "Hey, you deserve better," after the Dolphins thoroughly embarrassed the Broncos on Sunday. And of course the Niners, he's looking at it, or at least DeLucci's looking at it through Niner-centric glasses. The obvious question is, why would the Denver Broncos be in a rush to trade their all-world cornerback? But he is a free agent at the end of the year. They did move Bradley Chubb last year in a kind of a similar situation. The Niners do have the cap space and the draft capital to make any trade they really want to make if they deem it so. What do you think? First of all, I guess do you think the 49ers need help in the secondary? And the Niners, it seems like, have been hesitant to make these kind of lateral moves or minor moves, though they did bring in Willis and Amenahue at different times over the last few years. But it seems like John Lynch is now in the mode of like, hey, we want to do things of significance that are going to make us significantly better. McCaffrey makes them significantly better. Javon Hargrave makes them significantly better. And obviously a trade for Patrick Surtain would do the same thing. What do you think of Denver's situation and the idea that the Niners, before the early November trade deadline, could actually swing a deal for one of the NFL's better corners?
Well, I think that we need to categorize the transactions that the 49ers have executed and will continue to execute into the future into two separate buckets. They're going to be micro transactions and they're going to be mega transactions. And the mega transactions, those are for players who move the needle seriously, for stars. And the 49ers have been willing to engage in these kind of transactions, and they're willing to pay, but they have to be for a player that seriously moves the needle. And I do think that Patrick Surtain II would move the needle, because it was Pat Surtain, his dad, the first, who was that guy that was complaining on social media. You talked about that, but anyway, the microtransactions we've seen happen as well on almost a year-to-year basis, right? 2020, Jordan Willis. 2021, Charles Amenahue. And then we've seen the mega transactions happen. 2019, I would consider that a mega transaction. Emmanuel Sanders, that one had a big impact on the 49ers, and they sent a couple picks over to Denver for Emmanuel Sanders. Obviously, there was the 2017 Jimmy Garoppolo trade, but that was a bit of an outlier because it was Bill Belichick just offering Garoppolo up to the 49ers for that second-round pick. The big mega transaction was last season for Christian McCaffrey. A handful of draft picks, and that obviously fit it perfectly into the bucket of this guy moves the needle. I think somebody like Surtain would move the needle and make the 49ers defense completely airtight, right? Because I think there is that one little weakness, and maybe the second one might be the opposite edge rusher spot, especially if some injuries happen. But that cornerback rotation is still a little bit iffy, especially if players start getting hurt. They're moving Diamond Lenore inside. Isaiah Oliver's playing a little bit better, but they're playing matchups with him. Bigger body. I thought he did a great job against Darren Waller on Thursday against the Giants. But yeah, you get another star cornerback opposite of Charvarius Ward. All of a sudden, this defense, you don't see any holes in it, right? I just don't think that Denver's in a position where they would let Patrick Surtain go anywhere, because he's still on his rookie contract. Even if this team is going to do a full strip down and rebuild, that's a foundational piece, the type of team control that you have there. And every man has his price, they say. Well, fine, Denver might have a price, but this could be one of those exorbitant prices. This could be one of those that requires a first round pick to head their way plus some. And that's where I look at the 49ers bigger picture situation. And there's, for long-term sustainability has been very important to them throughout this whole process, even as they've stockpiled players. And I think the long-term sustainability plan for the 49ers makes it mandatory that they have a first-round pick in this coming draft, because it's time for them to draft a tackle. It really is. Trent Williams not getting any younger. You look at right tackle, Colton McKivitz, even if he's good this season, he's only under contract for 2 years, and you need depth at the position. I mean, I think the 49ers finally have premium draft capital again following the Trey Lance trade, or the trade up to get Trey Lance. And part of their plan is to use some of that premium draft capital on an offensive lineman this coming off season. Now, can you get Surtain for more McCaffrey-like package, which not the full extent of the McCaffrey package, but maybe a couple lower picks? Maybe, but I don't think so. Again, right? I think that Denver looks at this guy as untouchable. And by untouchable, I mean the price is really damn high. King's ransom kind of stuff, which is how the 49ers termed Deebo Samuel back in the day, right? Before he signed his contract extension. That's just the way that I see it. So I see it as very unlikely. But don't discount some of the microtransactions. Don't discount some of the other bucket, right? The Charles Omenihu, the Jordan Willis type of transaction, because that might be exactly what the 49ers need to give them that little bit of extra as far as edge rushing depth goes. Because as we've seen, anybody that you put into the room with Chris Kasarik has a chance to get a whole lot better. And we're seeing it again this year with how that interior has developed for the 49ers up front.
A couple guys that maybe would fit in that minor trade category are a couple ex-Niners, DJ Reed with the Jets, maybe Jimmy Ward with the Texans, guys that at least are familiar with the Niner culture, the Niner defense, the other personnel. I could see both those guys being a huge, huge gets. It doesn't have to be Surtain. And I do think you're hitting on a point that's really right on the money as far as offensive tackle. I do believe this is the draft that whatever draft capital they are going to have, and they're going to have a significant amount when you factor in the compensatory picks, that's going to go to drafting, one of these first-round tackles. And to me, there's 4 or 5 of them. Olu Fashanu from Penn State, Joe Alt from Notre Dame, J.C. Latham from Alabama, Amarius Mims from Georgia, Kingsley Sumamataia from BYU, Graham Barton from Duke. I think those are probably your top 5 tackles or top 6 tackles, and they're all going to go in the first round, and it'll be interesting to see, if the 49ers, I think they're at that point in their history where, yeah, I think you're right. I think offensive tackle is definitely on the top of their list to get a blue chip guy in this next draft, and they have the draft capital to get it done. All right, let's talk a little bit about last week. I haven't talked to you since the Thursday nighter. We saw each other, in the elevator on the way down to the locker room, and we were riding the elevator with a bunch of fans, and they were joyous. They were feeling good. They were shouting out our YouTube channels, which was even better. But there was a lot of excitement over that one. And one of the things you said to me was, man, it was amazing how much Martindale brought the blitz. And I didn't realize until you spit out the percentage that, how many blitzes. And then when I got home that night and I had a chance to rewatch the All 22 on the NFL Plus over the next 24 hours, it wasn't just that they brought the blitz and the percentage. It was the array of exotic blitzes and different blitzes that Martindale kept bringing over and over. And it's hilarious to me, Dave, that people viewed Brock Purdy as playing poorly in this game. I could make a strong argument that that might have been his best game. Just from the standpoint, I know it didn't look good, and I know there were some bad throws in the first half, but just the way he threw with anticipation. The one that really stands out to me is the one that Baldinger highlighted in his film review, where basically Purdy had a free rusher coming at him. Giants had a 6-man surface, and the Niners had to block it with 5, so you knew one guy was going to shake free, and it was the right outside linebacker who came flying off the edge at Purdy. Purdy literally had to either take the underneath route or throw it to Ronnie Bell well before he even got close to his break, and had to put it in a spot at the near the pylon that nobody was there, and he had to kind of create the whole route for Ronnie. And man, between these are the last 2 7th-round picks. Purdy threw with anticipation. The ball came out well before the break. Ronnie breaks at the right spot, turns around, and makes a wonderful catch and gets 2 feet down. That's the kind of anticipatory throw that's really, really high level and impresses guys like Kyle Shanahan. And yet, for whatever reason, it doesn't impress the fans who were just like, he was bad. It's like, not only was he not bad, this was maybe his best game when you factor in the blitz and the anticipatory throws.
Well, okay, so there have been 3 games. The most efficient quarterback on 3rd and 4th downs in all of football, even more efficient than Tua Tagovailoa, whose offense hung 70 on the Dolphins, has been Brock Purdy. So there's no way in hell that Brock Purdy was bad against the New York Giants, because the sample's not big enough. If he had a bad game against the Giants, he's not ranking first in that. That's expected points per play. That's efficiency. It's a smart stat that looks at exactly how he's performed relative to down and distance. And that's relative to 3rd and 4th down. I still remember the big 4th down conversion against Pittsburgh to really set the tone for this 49ers season. But that Bell play, I believe, was on 3rd down as well. I mean, it makes the claims that Brock Purdy has a weak arm or a mediocre arm completely laughable. Just put that tape on. Brian Baldinger highlighted it. He does such a great job, but he highlighted that throw. He's throwing off his back foot against a 6-man rush against a free rusher. And people don't realize that football fields are 53 1/3 yards wide. They're not narrow. It's almost an optical illusion when you look at the field, because it's 120 yards long, counting the end zones. You think that it's much skinnier than that. They're actually 53 1/3 yards wide. So when you're throwing across the hash to the pylon, that's some serious distance. And if that throw hangs at all, that's going to be a pick. Yeah, it's going to be a pick.
And it's a pick 6, maybe.
Yeah, it's probably a pick 6. There's nobody there unless Brock Purdy can tackle and run after the cornerback, which I don't think he can do when he's on his back foot falling away from the play, probably going to get knocked down. I mean, the physicality of that throw is what jumped out to me. Now, also obvious, multiple things can jump out to you. The anticipation, he's letting go of that ball before Bell's out of his break. And then, the 7th round is the new 5th round for the 49ers, right? Brock Purdy, Ronnie Bell delivering. Maybe we're going to see Jalen Graham start to deliver for this team as well at some point. But it really does seem that they're scoring in that 7th round. But there were so many plays like that, Larry. Again, the 3rd down efficiency, they call that the quarterback's down, the money down. Brock Purdy and the 49ers were 9 of 16 on 3rd down, which is really damn good, especially considering the fact that a lot of the discombobulation of the offense seemed to happen on 1st and 2nd down, which made the 3rd downs tougher in this game, right? But early on, my favorite throw of the game, Juwan Jennings, right over the middle, right? But, the casuals, as I like to call them, said, oh, Purdy threw it behind him. Then you watch the tape, and you see the safety coming across the middle of the field. If that throw is not behind Juwan Jennings, it's either batted down or intercepted. Yeah. It had to be behind him. So you have these people who casually watch on TV, not knowing what they're watching, and then they just throw a bunch of crap out there on the internet saying, oh, he threw it 2 steps behind him, as if they could somehow do better, right? If they're in an NFL pocket, the way that they say this. But then you actually watch the tape, it had to be behind him. Purdy did that on purpose. And this is happening several times. There's a reason that Kyle Shanahan said this guy's the real deal. this offseason, heading into the season. And it's because he saw stuff like this on tape over and over and over again. And now we're seeing it over and over and over again. And this is why we have the advanced stats, because it takes the bias out of things. Is the guy producing on third downs or is he not? Well, there's one quarterback ranked number 1 in the league right now, and it's Brock Purdy. The answer is yes, he's consistently producing on third downs, and that takes all the bias out of it.
I was asked a lot this week. I was on 95.7 The Game with Matt Steinmetz and Daryl the Guru Johnson, and they were asking me to kind of compare Brock Purdy and Jimmy Garoppolo. And I've talked to a bunch of people around the team, a bunch of people who know Brock Purdy. I know a scout who scouted Brock Purdy his senior year. I also know a scout who scouted both Jimmy Garoppolo and Brock Purdy because he had different regions of the countries in different years for an AFC team. And he said, Krug, the main difference is between the ears. That Brock Purdy is a really, really smart football player who can process more variables faster than Jimmy G. You could argue Jimmy has a stronger arm. You could argue Jimmy can throw with anticipation the same way Brock can. But the one thing he said was that he felt like Brock was more wed to the process of football, Monday through Saturday. In preparation, but really he actually made the statement that he felt like Brock was smarter than Jimmy as a football player. And I thought this would be a perfect question to throw to you. I agree with that, and I've talked to some other 49er people who feel the same way, but you're an independent thinker. I mean, you saw Jimmy, and Jimmy had a lot of success, and we don't want to denigrate Jimmy in any way, but what do you think of those two observations, that Brock is more wed to the process non-game day, and that generally he's a smarter person and a smarter a quarterback than Garoppolo?
Well, when you're looking for offensive efficiency, then it's the job of the play caller and the quarterback to unite, right? That brain trust at the top of the offense has to work in unison. I think that Purdy works in unison with Kyle Shanahan, the way that Purdy sees the game, the way that Purdy processes the game. I think he works in unison with Kyle Shanahan better than Jimmy Garoppolo did. I will say that Jimmy Garoppolo, his game anticipation was really good, especially in the 49ers system. We saw it. I know there's been some struggles. He didn't look very good on Sunday night, didn't look fully comfortable yet with the Raiders, but with the 49ers from 2017 to 2022, when you look at the same third down efficiency stat that I just pulled for Brock Purdy, he's number 1 in the league. The only quarterback more efficient on third downs from 17 to 22 than Jimmy Garoppolo was Patrick Mahomes for the Chiefs. So, and we saw it time and time again. Jimmy would somehow find that window on third down. He would step up in those big moments. But the interception rate was higher than Brock Purdy's was, except for last season where Jimmy was able to cut out the interceptions. Maybe you credit Brian Griese for that. But I always sensed that there was a little bit of a tug of war between Shanahan and Garoppolo. Garoppolo wanted the offense a little bit more along the lines of what he had come up with, and it was a run and shoot offense at Eastern Illinois, and then he played in that Patriot style system, so he wanted things a little bit differently. Shanahan wanted the way that he ran offense, and he wanted to imprint that on Jimmy Garoppolo. And it a couple times I think it even reached a public boiling point. I think it was after week 2 when they played Seattle last year. It was funny because Garoppolo came in for Trey Lance, right? And the 49ers had the Lance offense installed, which involved some more downfield passing. And Garoppolo just had to take the reins of that offense. And he did a really good job. He came in cold turkey and executed the Lance offense. And this is something I talked to him about in the locker room. And he's like, yeah, I want to see more of those plays. There was a little bit of frustration I sensed there. And but obviously this was just a conversation between me and Jimmy. But then Jimmy steps up to the podium and I asked him a question, and he directly referenced the conversation that we were having in the locker room because he wanted it on the record. And he said, yeah, I'm hoping that we start taking more shots like that. And that told me right away that Jimmy Garoppolo and Kyle Shanahan, I mean, he wanted to send a clear message. He wanted things to be a little bit different. And I just think that Brock Purdy and Kyle Shanahan are in more lockstep than Jimmy Garoppolo and Kyle Shanahan were. Now, that's not to say that the Garoppolo era was a failure for the 49ers. It was tremendously successful in many ways. Efficiency, wins. I mean, this team did a lot with Jimmy Garoppolo. I think both men got the best out of each other, but that relationship, ran its course. And now Kyle Shanahan has a quarterback that can do a lot of the same things that Jimmy can, as far as the release, as far as the intermediate accuracy. But maybe Kyle Shanahan could take this efficiency up yet another notch, because he is in better lockstep with with Brock Purdy than Jimmy Garoppolo. And if you talk to somebody like Steve Young, I mean, he said this multiple times. He thought there was always a little bit of that disconnect between Garoppolo and Shanahan. And I think that Steve will tell you he's seeing Brock Purdy and Kyle Shanahan on the same page in a way that we might not have seen yet from a Shanahan quarterback.
Yeah. In fact, I got to call Steve. I haven't talked to Steve in a while, and I got to get him back on here. He would be phenomenal to kind of break it down with. I love chopping it up with Steve Young. Carlos says, Krueger Lombardi, the Ruth and Gehrig of Niners reporting. Look at that. That is lofty. And Junior Beckhold says, this guy named Grant is still a Purdy skeptic. All right, let's not go there. Let's leave Grant alone and keep it rolling. One quick, before we're 20 minutes into this, we got almost 1,000 people in the room. Really glad to have Dave here on the Krueg Show. Of course, we're brought to you by Pig and a Pickle, best barbecue in Northern California, New York style Italian sausage, Marin Auto Glass as well. Did you see Mike Florio say that Brock Purdy doesn't have a quarterback name to Peter King, and Peter King scoff at the comment and be like, that's the silly, I think he called it the silliest thing. Could have called it the stupidest thing. But I mean, where does that come from? I mean, I want to give everybody the benefit of the doubt, and maybe I just don't get Florio's humor, because I just don't get Mike at all, period. But I mean, if he's joking, then I should just have a better sense of humor, and I should have gotten it. I'm sorry. But if he's being serious, and Peter King took him seriously, what the heck is that? I mean, what is that? Dave, what do you make of that? That Florio would say, well, Purdy rhymes with turdy. Well, hey, Mike, it also rhymes with 30, as in 30 points a game. So maybe that should be the rhyme you come up with. That to me was one of the oddest comments from a guy with a relatively large platform that I can remember in recent years.
I just think it's the 49ers quarterback position.
He just doesn't like it.
I think that the 49ers quarterback position is a lightning rod for engagement. I think that Jimmy Garoppolo took a whole lot of unnecessary criticism. I think that Trey Lance took a whole lot of unnecessary criticism. People just didn't take those two situations at face value, when that's all you had to do. All you had to do is say Jimmy Garoppolo is a good quarterback who's not in a very elite tier, but he's good, but he just gets hurt too much. That was the summary. I don't know why people just couldn't accept the summary. I don't know why people couldn't accept the summary with Trey Lance. Is the 49ers took a big swing on a raw project, but unfortunately 2 injuries happened and they couldn't thread that needle, and then they ran into a better option in Brock Purdy. I mean, for some reason, people had to over-dramatize both the Garoppolo and the Lance situations, probably because it was correlated with engagement. And now you see the same pattern repeating itself with Purdy. The simple answer with Purdy is that this is a sensational story. Final pick of the 2022 draft, is playing top-level efficiency football right now. And we should just be sitting back and appreciating this as it evolves. But everybody's just got to one-up each other with some kind of crazy take or some kind of crazy line, right? So I think that just falls into the same bucket. I think that the 49ers quarterback situation is always going to be a magnet for this, because it's going to make headlines. So if you say something crazy, it's going to make headlines. And, some people have the goal of wanting to make those headlines because they'll draw more traffic to whatever they're selling.
That is wild, though. Wild take for sure. Randall says Florio rhymes with idiot. Well, it doesn't, but Florio's still an idiot. All right, that made me laugh. Dave, here are my keys, and I want to get into Arizona a little bit. I watched all of Arizona, Dallas. I watched all of Arizona against the Giants. I've watched too much Arizona the last 2 weeks. But here's my keys to beating Arizona. You got to stop James Conner. Because, man, if he gets rumbling, you got to go low on James Conner because he's a big physical back. You got to dial up the rush on Dobbs. You need to eliminate Arizona's explosives, something the Giants did well in the second half and won the game, something Dallas didn't do well. You got to defend Arizona's 2 good tight ends. Ertz and McBride are fantastic. I really like their rookie cornerback, Catrell Clark, and you got to get Kazir White blocked. you did a tweet earlier this week that I will gladly admit that I'm stealing from my 95.7 The Game pregame show at the Hilton with Lo Neal preparation that I'm doing. I
Wait,
saw it,
go
and it was
Bulldogs.
like it was like
Tell me what's
9
up.
paragraphs, and it was some awesome stuff. Really, really good breakdown. In fact, Dave's got 100,000 followers on Twitter. Become one of Dave's followers on Twitter if you're not. I say that. The heck, Dave doesn't need followers. I probably need followers. But Dave, go ahead. Give us your breakdown on what it was a lengthy tweet, but you really went into great detail on every aspect of the Cardinals. So you got a lot of thoughts on them. Give me 2 or 3. Give me the highlight reel of that tweet in your mind as far as keys to winning on Sunday for the Niners.
So I'm looking at it right now. I just pulled it up, but I think that your key is the biggest one because I think, Arizona, the efficiency stats have them as the 10th best team in football right now. So they have overperformed the expectation. And we saw them beat Dallas 28-16. They're in the game with Washington until the very end in week 1. And then they probably should have beaten the New York Giants, jumped out to a huge lead and then lost because they blew it in the second half. So we probably saw the overperforming, and then we saw who Arizona might end up being over the long run, just because this team is devoid of star talent. They might have some feisty players. They might have some up and coming players, but in general, we're not seeing Kyler Murray. We're not seeing Budda Baker. Both of those guys are hurt. So in general, this is going to be one of those scrappy teams. And you have to stop a scrappy team from being able to impose its will physically. And that usually happens through running the football. That's how Arizona beat the Dallas Cowboys. They rushed for 222 yards and over 7 yards a pop. And you said James Conner. I mean, he's the guy that can leave his imprint on an opponent because he weighs 233 pounds. He's one of the biggest featured backs in the NFL. He might be the biggest featured back now because in general, I think backs are getting a little bit bigger. I think the 49ers model now is, okay, hey, let's have these guys that are 215, 220 plus to kind of punish these downsizing defenses, but they don't have anybody who's 233. And Connor runs well and moves well for being 233. So it's almost throwback size back to the 80s, back to the 90s. And I don't think Dallas, which is a pass rush oriented team, was really built to handle it. They also surprised them with Joshua Dobbs running. Joshua Dobbs is not afraid to run. Against the Giants, he trucked the guy on his way into the end zone. They thought he was going to slide, and he ran in. But a 44-yard run to open the game from Joshua Dobbs. James Conner running his tail off. And again, 233 pounds is tough to handle, especially for some of these downsizing defenses. All of that kind of set up a platform for Joshua Dobbs to go 17 of 21 with relative ease against the Cowboys. So you can't have the opposing quarterback, who a lot of people had never heard of until this Sunday. You can't have that opposing quarterback delivering that easy and that efficient of a box score. And the way that you stop that from happening is stopping the run. So this is going to be the big test for the 49ers this week. I think Arizona's offensive line has struggled in pass protection, especially up the middle, but they've been good in run blocking. But there's a lot to get there if you're able to force them into passing situations. So stop the run, go have some fun. That's what the 49ers like to say. That has never been more true than this weekend.
We got a great donation here from Mr. Reason. He says, Krueger and Lombardi, thank you both for your amazing balance. The common thread is effort on the homework to deliver a solid analysis. We're trying. That's for sure. Dave and I are trying to cover the story fairly.
Are you going to go get a lobster dinner or something?
Seriously.
Yeah,
I know, man. I don't know. I don't know about that. One of the things that I loved in your breakdown, and I was amazed watching him, Michael Wilson, the former Stanford product, is really intriguing. And you were talking about explosives. He had close to a 70-yard reception. And he's a really explosive player. I didn't realize he's a good sized wide receiver, but he's also fast. And then you mix in Rondale Moore and Hollywood Brown, and suddenly there's some real speed, and explosives have to be a major concern in this game. How do you think the Niners match up on the corner? Do you expect that we're going to see the newest 49er in the mix here, the former Cowboy Brown? Is he going to wind up playing in this game?
Yeah. So I don't know about Anthony Brown playing in this game because I think that he might still be coming off that Achilles. I don't know if he'll be active or how the 49ers are going to balance that out. But I do know that you're absolutely right about the diversity that we see within Arizona's receiving core from a size perspective. And, we're also seeing a little bit of, Shanahan-esque stuff to where Rondale Moore took a handoff the last game. And he's fast, right? This is 4.3 speed out of Purdue. But I mean, he's small. Hollywood Brown is small. These are they're between 5'7" and 5'9". Then you got Michael Wilson, who's 6'2". Then you have some of your tight ends on this football team that bring more size. So they got this size diversity there. And then they also are trying to run a little bit of positionless skill position stuff, and that can help spark the run game, which has been good. Number 3 overall efficiency run game for Arizona. So we'll see how the 49ers combat this. The general truth is that all this gimmicky stuff, let me rephrase that. Effective plays that don't look like gimmicks can start looking a whole lot like gimmicks if you're getting your ass kicked up front, right? And the 49ers defensive line has been awesome so far. And I think their defensive line is better suited to stop the run than a defensive line like Dallas's, which is just pin your ears back, a high boom or bust kind of defensive line, right? High risk, high reward kind of defensive line. I think the 49ers, especially with Eric Armstead in the middle, with how much of a stalwart he is commanding those run blocks, I think they're a much more stable commodity that can make a team like Arizona look a whole lot worse. And again, that starts with stopping the run. No matter how creatively the Cardinals try to attack it with Rondale Moore taking handoffs, or whether it be that or James Conner trying to bruise himself into the line, I think the 49ers are a team that's much more built to stop that balanced brand of football. And we'll see, because this is going to be their biggest test against the run game so far.
Let's talk about the D-line a little bit. Nick Bosa and Javon Hargrave combined for 11 total pressures. In fact, Hargrave and Bosa finished with the highest defensive grades for Pro Football Focus, 93 for Hargrave, 92.8 for Bosa. Armstead had a nice day as well. He had 3 pressures, but the guy I want to get your thoughts on is Javon Kinlaw, because, Dave, I mean, it's been a hard slog for Javon Kinlaw to get some momentum going on his young career. But, Dave, he continues to play really, really well through 3 weeks. He had 4 pressures in this game last week against the Giants. He's active. He's finding the football. He's getting in the passing lanes. He's not a big stat filler, right? He's not going to sack the quarterback for the most part. He's not going to come firing off of blocks and make tons of tackles, but he's going to absorb blocks. And when I asked him about it, he kind of giggled. He kind of knows, that he's built to absorb bodies up front. But there's a leverage that he's playing with this year. There's a consistency. There's a motor. There's an intensity. I love what I'm seeing out of Javon Kinlaw. Give me your thoughts when you watch the All-22 on Kinlaw.
Well, first, just consider the path that Javon Kinlaw has taken ever since entering the NFL. He joins the 49ers in 2020. That's a really tough season to enter the NFL because there's no offseason program, right? So here's a guy who just had to show up at training camp week 1 and play, and that was his only healthy offseason. He hadn't had a healthy offseason until this most recent one, because he suffered a severe knee injury to end the 2020 season against the Cowboys. And then I don't know if it was misdiagnosed or what happened, but he came back out there without surgery in 2021, but just after a few weeks, just couldn't do it. And then they realized that, oh boy, he needs ACL reconstruction. So he went under the knife for the ACL surgery in 2021. That meant that he wasn't healthy in the 2022 offseason. And that means that he wasn't healthy at all throughout 2022. He still had all the swelling in the knee, the fluid buildup, because ACL reconstruction, especially on a guy who's 6'7", 6'8", 330 pounds, that's a big deal. That's a tough surgery to come back from. So he was spending all of last season just trying to get away from the 8 ball, so to speak. Finally, he entered this 2023 offseason healthy, and he was in the 49ers facility the whole time. And what the totality of this story for Javon Kinlaw tells me is that this guy just doesn't give up. There were so many people that wrote him off, right? There was so many injury frustrations, setbacks. He was trying to play through a knee injury that, wasn't properly addressed with surgery until several months later. And he played several games in between the initial injury and when the surgery happened. I mean, so much went wrong for Javon Kinlaw, but this guy was still in the facility grinding day in, day out this offseason. So, I mean, the perseverance here should be really respected. And the fact that he's finally healthy, combined with the fact that he has been in that facility working his tail off for so long, I think finally the stars aligned for Javon Kinlaw. Because remember, this is a first round talent. There's a reason why they picked him so high. Because I mean, again, he, like you said, his ability to absorb blockers, his ability to manhandle people, that was on tape at South Carolina. And now it's finally on tape with the 49ers. I saw one of those performance charts the other day. X-axis was difficulty of assignment and Y-axis was productivity. So you want it to be further to the right and further up. Javon Kinlaw's dot was further to the right than almost any other NFL player, which means that he was handling so many double teams. He's been handling so many difficult situations, and his efficiency was still really positive. It was still in that upper right quadrant of the graph. So he's really, really delivering in the way I think the 49ers initially envisioned him to when they drafted him back in 2020. It's just taken several years because he hasn't been healthy until now. But you have to tip your cap because a lot of guys, even if they might have that potential, 4 years down the line, they're tapped out. You know, the media has gotten to them, especially if they're a first round pick. Just that the grind has gotten to them. It's tough to not be healthy, but Kinlaw hasn't given up. And that's where he is, where he's at right now.
Yeah, it's great to see, and he gives a lot of praise to Eric Armstead for helping him along. Armstead's like a big brother to him, he says. One more on the Cardinals. Jonathan Gannon's their head coach, first-year head coach, comes over from Philadelphia. He's a defensive guy. Under Gannon, and I'm taking this right from your tweet, Cardinals have the second lowest blitz rate in the league, 12.5%. So it's going to be a different – if they go with that and they stay consistent with that and they don't blitz and they drop 7 or 8 into coverage and make Brock be accurate, how's this going to be a different challenge for Purdy coming off a week where the Giants gave him defined reads and tried to speed him up, and he handled it like a veteran? This week he may see the opposite. He may have to be really extra accurate, but the Cardinals, it sounds like, are going to try to get it done with their front four.
Yeah, well, then they run the 3-4, and they've got a couple scrappy edge rushers that, once again, you're going to watch this game. I think a lot of fans will, and they'll be like, I don't recognize anybody.
Dennis Gardeck or something.
Yeah. So, I mean, you've got Dennis Gardeck coming off one side, and then Victor Dimukeji coming off the other side. I hope I pronounced that right, so I'm going to have to take a look in their pronunciation guide. But those are the 2, 3, 4 outside linebackers that are going to be coming off the edge. They both have 3 sacks apiece so far this year. So Arizona has generated some pressure from those guys. Where they haven't done well, especially against the run, is with the 3 down linemen up front. And I think that's where the 49ers can really make their hay, because we know that Spencer Burford has struggled a little bit. He's going to be matched up with a down lineman, and the Cardinals haven't been impressive as far as that goes. I think their linebacker and their safety play has been solid. I don't think their outside cornerback play has been all that great. And it always comes down to, and I don't know if there's a team in the league that can match the 49ers mono as far as firepower goes. But it always comes down to the 5 eligibles in the matchups, right? And the 49ers just have more firepower than any defense in the league when it comes to the 5 eligibles. So if they can protect decently well, and if Purdy does his job playing point guard, and I do not mean that in a derogatory fashion, Purdy himself has called himself a point guard in the past. If he does the job there, the 49ers should have the advantage, right? And maybe in this game, it's leveraging that advantage you have on the outside, because the cornerback play hasn't been great for Arizona, making them shade another player to help on against Ayuk, if assuming he plays, or Deebo Samuel, and then you beat him with Christian McCaffrey over the middle. It just depends on how Arizona plays chess, because how they play chess is going to determine the move that you make if you're Brock Purdy and Kyle Shanahan. And I think the 49ers just have too many answers potentially for Arizona, assuming the Cardinals cannot rush the passer the way that you need to disrupt the 49ers.
Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch were given contract extensions by Jed York. Some people suggested if Eddie D owned this team, he'd wait until they won a Super Bowl. I just think that it's official that these guys are getting it done, and Jed wants to reward them right now. I'm not surprised at all by Shanahan, because I think Shanahan was a proven entity as an offensive play caller in Atlanta, where his offense had record-setting numbers on first down, and he's carried that into San Francisco, surrounded now with great weapons, and he's doing it again on offense. They're scoring 30 a game. But to me, John Lynch was a little bit of a projection. We all like John Lynch, Stanford guy, smart guy, and a guy who's, thoroughly capable, Hall of Fame player. But he'd never been a general manager, and to make him a general manager was a little bit of a projection. And anytime you're projecting, there's always some unknown. But we talked about this the last stream that we did, that Lynch is maximizing free agency. He understands the locker room dynamic and how the players react to new guys in the room, and he understands the compensatory formula, and they're playing their free agency card or hand of cards like a fiddle. It was just absolutely perfect. Give me your thoughts on the Shanahan and Lynch extension. Did it surprise you? Did the timing surprise you? And are you surprised at all that John Lynch has emerged as one of the NFL's better GMs? Or maybe you don't even agree with that. If you don't, I push back. But I personally think he's a top 5 GM in the league right now.
Well, I mean, the results speak for themselves. They turned around the worst roster in football into what I think it's almost clear now that this is the best roster in football. Again, that doesn't necessarily equate to winning the Super Bowl. You just have to give yourself the best shot at it on a year in, year out basis. And gosh, they've done a lot to give themselves the best shot at it. I think that John Lynch is a great leader, right? He's a great leader of men. So he's delegated responsibilities appropriately. He's not some power hungry GM trying to make every move about him. I think part of that is a natural hierarchy at the top. Kyle Shanahan technically hired John Lynch, right? I know that they consider themselves a two-headed monster there at the top. They both have to sign off on the biggest moves, but it's not like Lynch was the GM that installed the head coach. So I think just that instills this spirit of collaboration at the top of the 49ers hierarchy. Beyond that, Adam Peters has a big role in this team. And the job that Lynch, Shanahan, and Peters have done at the top has been a really cohesive one. You cannot discount the melding of the coaching and the scouting department. So what you have scouts sitting in on coaching meetings, and you'll have coaches regularly meeting with people in the scouting department. And that ends up being so damn important when you have to, take out the sniper rifle and make sure that you're picking players who, fit your scheme in the fifth, 6th, and 7th rounds. You have to know exactly what you're looking for. You can't just go into the later rounds blind, right? You have to go and you have to find players who will plug and play into your system. And we saw it with Trent Baalke and Jim Harbaugh. I don't think that the scouting department got along with the coaching staff at all. I mean, that was the thing. That was the rift, right? The coaching department led by like Jim Harbaugh and the scouting team led by Trent Baalke. That was where all the drama was coming from. There was a rift between those two entities. The fact that Lynch and Shanahan are on the same page, the fact that Adam Peters and his department is on the same page as the coaching staff allows the 49ers to be, optimally efficient with their draft picks and with their signings, or at least they give themselves the chance of being optimally efficient. Not everything's going to work out. We know that, but they are picking players that fit because both sides of this equation have knowledge of what the other side is doing. The scouting department has a very intimate knowledge of what the coaching staff is looking for. And I think that if you want to talk about John Lynch and giving him credit, that is, the largest, most important piece of this puzzle is that as the general manager who needs to be this, high up leader of everything that's going on in the building, he has overseen a system that is very, very cohesive. Whereas in other spots in the NFL, including the 49ers right before he was hired, it hasn't been cohesive, right? So that's what John Lynch should get the most credit for.
I just think John also, he knows the dynamic, and you can ruin your locker room chemistry if you bring in too many free agents and pay them too highly and don't reward the guys in the room, and there's a pecking order. And I just think he's keenly aware of that pecking order, but at the same time, and he understands he's got Jed programmed to be like, hey, look, the money's there if you have a difference maker. So now it's like they're only looking for difference makers. Mooney Ward, difference maker. Javon Hargrave, difference maker. If they make a trade this year, I agree, it will either be for a tinker. I don't know how you described it before, but like a small piece, or it's going to be like a major piece. It's not going to be one of these kind of in betweens. It'll be somebody off the waiver wire, off somebody's practice squad that they poached, or it's going to be some significant player on another team that they trade for. And I think John's got that equation down. So the Niners, in when you look at all these different ways to approach it, they have stars coming in free agency. They don't have an unhappy locker room when those guys arrive, and they're letting the rank and file free agent walk. They're replacing him with compensatory selections in the draft, and then the 26th youngest roster in pro football with great depth and star power. I mean, to me, it's just a matter of time before they climb to the top of this mountain. They're doing all of the right things, I think, as far as roster building. The top of the mountain, though, is suddenly very, very competitive. Buffalo has looked monster. They beat Washington 37-3. They've forced 5 turnovers. They've outscored their last opponent 75-13. Miami just put 70 on the board against Denver without Jalen Waddle, and the Dolphins look awesome. Kansas City just destroyed the Bears. Granted, it was the Bears. Philly defense really looks good. They lost Javon Hargrave, and they lost the great safety, but they still have replaced these guys with good young players, and they haven't missed a beat. They're the defending champs. They're looking great. Dallas looks good if you catch them on the right day. Who is the team that you think is the best in that top tier? If the top tier is Bills, Dolphins, KC, Niners, Eagles, Cowboys, who do you think's the best team? If it's the Niners, who's the number one challenger?
Well, first off, don't discount the Cleveland Browns. Their defense has been head and shoulders above everybody else's, including the 49ers so far. They're playing otherworldly defense through 3 weeks. We'll see,
especially up front.
That. But
and Denzel Ward, too.
Yeah, and everybody's playing the replay of Deshaun Watson throwing backwards, and rightfully so. That was a terrible play. But we also need to mention that he played his best game in a Browns uniform. And if he doesn't need to be great with that defense. If Deshaun Watson just starts showing competence again, all of a sudden, that's at least a tier 2 team. Right now, they're a tier 3 team because I haven't seen enough offensive consistency, but the defense itself is carrying everything for Cleveland. So anyway, to me, balance always wins the day. That's why I talk about Cleveland needing Watson and the offense to balance out a great defensive performance. That's why I think the 49ers look so tantalizing, because they've built a top 3 offense and a top 3 defense so far. That's why I'd be wary of Miami. We haven't seen this exact movie before from the Dolphins, but we've seen a similar one. Last year, they're number 1 in offensive efficiency. They're blowing the roof off of teams, and then they showed up and played the 49ers, and the 49ers beat them up, right? It was because they couldn't really play defense at the level that needed to be played to keep up with the 49ers, and they're so far through 3 games, it's an average defense again for Miami. And 2, just that brand of football doesn't tend to age with the season as well. The weather's going to get worse. Defenses are going to get tougher. Guys are going to get hurt. So you're playing, big time cohesion football right now in Miami. Everything's firing on full cylinders in September. Let's see if it's still firing on all cylinders in November and December. That's really, really important to watch. So yeah, a lot of respect to what they did right now. But when we look to see how well these things will age, balance always ages in the National Football League. The ability to play defense and offense is so huge. We see the media fawning over teams putting up a ton of points every single season in September. But it's the teams that have the double-edged sword ready to go, along with a good special teams unit. Those are the teams that can really get the job done moving forward. So I love Buffalo in the AFC for that reason. I love the 49ers in the NFC for that reason. You have to like Kansas City because they're the one team that has that cheat code at quarterback. The only team that we've seen over the past few years to be able to win a Super Bowl without extraordinary balance has been Kansas City. And that's because Patrick Mahomes just takes that offense into that FU level, right? He can take it into another mode when he needs to. And he did it to beat the 49ers and he did it to beat the Eagles. And obviously you can't discount the Eagles because they look like a balanced team right now as well. Dallas, we'll see. To me, Dallas, Larry, I get a front runner vibe from Dallas.
I do too.
They're a boom or bust team.
They're a bully team.
Yeah, they're a bully team that's going to gamble for interceptions and they're going to gamble for sacks, but they're not good against the run, right? So if another team starts playing downhill against Dallas and they lost their corner who's good at preying on all those picks and Trayvon Diggs, another team plays downhill, all of a sudden Dallas looks ordinary even against Arizona. And I think that's why the 49ers have beaten Dallas 2 years in a row, because they make sure they don't fall behind a team that preys on interceptions, that's able to pin its ears back and rush. Fall behind Dallas, it's tough. But if you get ahead, all of a sudden they lose that swagger. They lose that style of play that makes them so dangerous. So I view Dallas as a cut below the 49ers and the Eagles in the NFC. And then I look at teams like the Bills and the Chiefs in the AFC, and the Dolphins are banging on the door trying to join the Kansas City Chiefs and the Buffalo Bills. And I think it's going to take a little bit better defensive play for them. On the other side, you might have the Cleveland Browns banging on the door, but it's going to take a little bit better offensive play for them to meet the favorites there in the AFC in Buffalo and Kansas City.
And who gets Jonathan Taylor? Does he go to Cleveland to replace Nick Chubb? Does Dallas get Jonathan Taylor? Does Miami get Jonathan Taylor? Do the Eagles get Jonathan Taylor? I mean, Jonathan Taylor could swing, the power structure at the top in the NFL as well. We got almost 1,400 people in the room. Let me mention this one sponsor here. Today's show brought to you by Underdog Fantasy. You see them in the top left corner there. Underdog Fantasy give fans a way to play alongside your favorite football team all season long. Check out their weekly pick 'em players. When you pick between 2 to 5 players, select whether they'll go higher or lower on their game stats. You can win up to 20 times your money in a single game by going 5 for 5. It's 5 for 5. It's a fantasy game, but you can win real money. And for a limited time, you can sign up using the promo code Krueg, Krueg, and they'll match your first deposit up to $500. Use the link in the description to claim this offer. I'm going Brock Purdy higher than 229.5 passing yards and James Conner higher than 57.5 rushing yards. Who is Kyle Shanahan's number one rival? If you had asked me that, I would normally say Sean McVay, but now I'm thinking it could be Sirianni in Philly. It could very well be the Green Bay coach, LaFleur. It could be it could be a number of guys, really. It could be Mike McDaniel in Miami. If I said to you Kyle's number, or it could be Andy Reid. I mean, I think Andy Reid and Kyle are in that same neighborhood of elite play callers. Who do you think, if you gave Kyle, he probably wouldn't answer this honestly at a presser, but if you gave him truth serum, or you're just sitting around in Cabo in the offseason throwing footballs with him and Joe Staley, Kyle, who's your number one rival? He says,
well, I think for a rivalry to happen, there have to be enough meaningful meetings between the two parties, right? And the only one that really qualifies is Sean McVay. I know it's been one-sided except for the really big NFC championship game where the Rams got the 49ers. Now, if you talk about nemesis, as far as somebody that Shanahan needs to beat, I think Andy Reid is definitely on that list. He beat him in the Super Bowl, and then they won the game last year. Kansas City did at Levi Stadium. If the 49ers meet the Chiefs one more time here in the Super Bowl, that's going to turn into a full-fledged rivalry. That's when that will be, you'll have the critical amount of games, the minimum amount of games that turn that into true rivalry. It's just tough with Kansas City being on the opposite side of the bracket over in the AFC. And again, like Sirianni, I guess they faced what was Sirianni. Yeah, I think Sirianni was the coach when they beat him in 2021, early in the season. But it wasn't that 2022 NFC Championship game wasn't really a fair fight. And Brock Purdy's hurt so early in the game. Everybody kind of just chalks that up as a game that the 49ers wanted a mulligan in, and they may get a chance this year. So maybe by the end of this season, the Sirianni-Shanahan rivalry will have grown. But again, the only one with that critical mass so far of games is Shanahan McVay, in my opinion. I just need to see more back and forth between some of these coaches. Same thing with the Dolphins. They played Mike McDaniel once. McDaniel looked pretty pissed when they lost. He wanted to beat the old boss, right? But
yeah,
I mean, it's just a one-off at this point. We need more. We need another 49ers. We need a rematch of the Super Bowl from January 1985, Dolphins 49ers, for that to turn into an actual coaching rivalry.
Couple on the chat. One super from Ken Konecki says Watson isn't even a top 15 quarterback. I don't know about that. That we could debate that in a second here. Brandon Martinez drops this one. He says Chase Young's of the 49ers are one of his top 3 choices if he were traded by Washington. Well, he's playing really, really well right now. But this is the question I wanted to get your thoughts on. Los says, is this a trap game for the Niners?
No.
You don't think so?
They just saw Arizona beat the Cowboys.
Yeah,
I mean, the
that's
next two
sobering.
teams that you're playing, the Cardinals and the Cowboys, just played each other. You would think that the trap game would come against the team that lost, right?
Right.
Cardinals beat the Cowboys. The Cowboys won't be a trap game. Trust. I'm not saying that, but I'm saying that the fact that Arizona won last week eliminates the possibility of a trap game. 49ers would be idiots to have their guard down after what Arizona did to Dallas.
Yeah, no, I agree. Okay, so I was doing a little exercise. I went to lunch the other day with my 14-year-old, and it was Friday after the Thursday night game, and he's like, "Dad, that was a great game last night." We were talking a little bit about it, and I was chatting to my kid, and he said, "Where do you think Brock Purdy, Dad, ranks with quarterbacks in the league right now?" And I'm like, "Well, God, it's really hard to. It's hard. First, you got to create a standard of like, what's the question." And then basically he said, well, how many quarterbacks do you think are better than Brock Purdy? And I'm like, okay, let's define better. I said, well, I'm going to define better as guys that if they traded Brock Purdy for and they're better, I'd be really happy about the trade. And guys and everybody else that they would trade Brock Purdy for that I wouldn't be happy about the trade, even if they're comparable players, then I'm putting Purdy above them. For example, I'm factoring in age and cost. So, like Stafford, I think is probably better than Purdy. He's already won a Super Bowl. He's probably maybe a Hall of Famer, borderline. But he's 35 and he makes $40 million. And if you traded Brock Purdy for him, I'd be like, no, why would you do that? Same with Aaron Rodgers.
Stafford under pressure is very different than Stafford not under pressure.
Right.
That's one.
And then Aaron Rodgers is 39.
Yeah.
I was just going to say, Rodgers is 39. He makes almost $40 million. He's got an Achilles. I wouldn't do that one. Cousins and Wilson are maybe, they're very good quarterbacks. You could argue they're better, but they're older and they make a ton of money. So this is my list. This is what I have. These are the quarterbacks that I listed as better than Purdy. And like if the Niners traded Purdy for these guys straight up, I'd be like, yes, nice move. Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, Jalen Hurts, Justin Herbert, Joe Burrow, and I put Trevor Lawrence in there. One other guy that I know took Lawrence out and put Tua Tagovailoa in. But I've got, these other guys who are comparable: Stafford, Russell, Cousins, Deshaun Watson, Rodgers, Tua, Jared Goff, Dak Prescott. All guys that you can make an argument are better than Purdy if you wanted to. But they all make a lot of money for the most part, or have had injury problems, or are old. Even Lawrence, I feel a little silly because I just watched Lawrence look really bad against the Texans this week. But what do you think, Dave? If I said to you, how many quarterbacks in pro football, if we use better as, guys you would trade Purdy for, where do you think Purdy ranks? Is it possible that I have him as 8th. I have him as the 8th best quarterback in the NFL. Is that too glowing for Brock, or are you in agreement with me?
Well, that's the beauty of this season. We get to find out. I thought some of the names you put ahead of Purdy, there's a non-zero chance that by the end of the season you wouldn't be listing those names ahead of
like
Purdy
Herbert,
anymore, right?
Who else strikes you?
Burrow hasn't looked good out of the gate. I know he's a little bit hurt right now, but I liken a lot of what Burrow does well to what Purdy does well: the ability to handle pressure, distribute the football where it's supposed to be. Except that Burrow physically is more impressive than Brock Purdy, right? Joe Burrow is 6+. I don't. What is he? 6'3",
6'3", probably. 215, something like that.
Bigger body, bigger arm, but Purdy's got big hands, which is
controls the football, very accurate.
And again, Brock Purdy's physical skill set is not respected enough in that he is one of the quickest quarterbacks in football. Again, the 10-yard burst of the 50-yard, it's a split of the 40-yard dash for Brock Purdy. It was the same as Lamar Jackson's 10-yard burst, which to me, that's the big wild card in all of this. Everybody wants to stereotype Brock Purdy as this 7th-round quarterback, underdog story. He doesn't really have the same physical skill set as some of these guys. One of the key physical attributes that a quarterback needs to bring to the table: short area quickness. Brock Purdy blows most of everybody out of the water. And that, to me, as far as potentially raising his ceiling, that's huge. That's really big. So there's a lot of upward mobility for Purdy. Arm strength has been proven to not be an issue. He's the most accurate quarterback on record on intermediate passes. He's completing 93% of them this year. He already set the single season record last year, completing 80% of his intermediate passes, 10 to 20 yards. So we judge all quarterbacks within the context of the system that they're playing in. He's playing in Kyle Shanahan's system, which is all about the intermediates, and he is money. We have never seen a quarterback since PFF began tracking this 25 years ago that's been as accurate on intermediate passes. And then, I mean, we saw some of the blitz beaters last week. So, I mean, the point is that, yes, the sample is still not huge for Purdy, but it's approaching a full season. And he's got such an opportunity to continue showing his mettle over the course of this year with a good supporting cast by his side, to the point where I think we could be looking up at the end of this season. And I think a lot of people will be saying, oh, man, I really counted this guy out before I should have. I really was undervaluing him. So I don't know, like, if I'm putting 7 or 8 guys in front of him right now, because to me, that's like not a question that matters right now, right? What matters is how efficiently Purdy runs the offense within the context of what the 49ers are doing. This is an offseason question. In the offseason, we could see a full body of work and we could say, hey, he did a lot better than all these other guys. I'd rather have Purdy on my team. And it will become a very relevant question a year from now, because that's when Purdy's going to be up for a new contract.
Ken Konecki says Jalen Hurts is so overrated, getting carried away. Okay, 3 quick ones on the way out the door. Is Brandon Ayuk going to go Sunday? And if you were Shanahan, would you give him another week to rest up for Dallas, figuring you can beat the Niners have real quality depth now with Ronnie Bell and Tay Martin. If they wanted to go to Tay Martin, they also have Willie Snead, who's a really good player in my mind. Will they sit Ayuk and rest him for Dallas, or will he go?
I mean, I'm not a doctor. I'm not Brandon Ayuk. I don't know how he's feeling. If he's feeling fine, there's no reason to not play him. If he's not, then yeah, you can rest him again. It ultimately is just going to come down to how Brandon Ayuk is feeling. I don't think the 49ers are going to do anything to like save him for the Cowboys. It will just be a standard. Are you feeling good? Is the soreness away? Okay, can you perform? Great. Get on out there. If he's not, then he won't play.
And I threw this to Matt Barrows when we had Barrows on last. Give me your most underrated 49er. That he's really a good player, but man, he's underrated.
Sean Gibson. Nobody talks about the guy.
That's a good 32
call. Career interceptions. He's a sure-handed tackler. He ranked in the top 2 last year in 2 separate stats for safeties, and passer rating into his coverage because of all the picks, and in missed tackle percentage. It was so low that he was at the top of the list for that too. So, I mean, the guy opposite him gets a whole lot more fanfare. Talanoa Hufanga. He's a younger player, all pro last year. I think a lot, myself included, when they signed to Sean Gibson, I just kind of assumed that he was washed, that they just wanted somebody to hold down the fort for a couple of weeks. And, I think I wasn't in the minority there. I think most people around football probably thought that. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been available. I think he was coaching his son's Pop Warner team when he got a call from the 49ers last year. But he showed up in really good shape. And then he just started delivering practice after practice and then game after game. And it turned into a full body of work, leading the NFL leaders in interceptions in picks, right? They had 20 interceptions, the 49ers did, to lead the league. Gibson led the way with 5 picks. And also with that low missed tackle rate, it just turned into this whole body of work. It kind of grew in front of our eyes. And I think he kind of snuck up on us as a true impact player near the top of his position. Even this offseason, he signed a relatively small contract. I think the league is just assuming this guy is going to fall off of a cliff because of his age, the 33-year-old age, but it's not happening. So I think he's the most underrated 49er.
Yeah, he has a presence, and I got to ask him next time I talk to him, because he was on a very good Jacksonville defense in 2017. I'd love to hear how he would comp that defense to this defense. But he's very underrated. I'm going to go with 2 guys that I think, people would be surprised by. But I think both Ronnie Bell and Braden Willis are extremely underrated. I loved what I saw in the All-22 from Braden Willis. He moves guys in the run game. He's a try-hard blocker. He's an underrated receiver. The effort and the energy as a receiver across the middle is incredible. The fear, he's got no fear as a running across the middle. I love what I see out of Braden Willis and Ronnie Bell. I think both those guys are going to contribute significantly as the season goes on. All right, last question for you. who is the bigger offensive guru between Shanahan and McDaniel? I mean, McDaniel's doing some things that are absolutely amazing, Dave, and they've got a ton of speed, and he put on a clinic against Denver on Sunday. He gets guys, athletes in open spaces better than almost anybody I can think of. But did he get that from Kyle? Is Kyle's greatness tied to Mike? Who's the bigger offensive guru?
Well, McDaniel's doing something a little bit different in that he just decided that he wanted to work with pure speed, right? So they got Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle's on that team, Raheem Mostert is on that team. I mean, there was only one player who really rivaled Mostert, Tyreek Hill, in terms of the miles per hour, the trackers over the past few years, and that was Mostert. So they have all those guys on one team, and McDaniel has taken the Shanahan principles, adding his own flair and applying it to accentuate speed offensively. Kyle Shanahan is trying to do something a little bit different. He's trying to do the whole zag while everybody else is zigging. As the NFL is trying to get faster, well, Mike McDaniel's answer was, let me just get faster players than the faster league. Let me blow everybody away with speed. Let me just give them a double dose of that. Shanahan is trying to go physical while the rest of the league has downsized. So he's trying to skin the cat in a different way. I think both methods have seen success. I will say, though, that until Mike McDaniel can oversee a complete football team that plays defense at as high of a level as the 49ers are playing, then he's not going to have a chance to win a Super Bowl. He might have a chance this year. Maybe the defense will get better, but he has to show that he can oversee a balanced football team. As a head coach, it's not just about play calling. It's not just about being an offensive coordinator. It's about the full product. And to me, that's probably the most impressive overarching thing about Kyle Shanahan is that he stepped in there in 2017 and said, we're going to commit to building a defensive line. My first ever article covering the 49ers was about the defensive line that they were trying to build. First day of training camp 2017. I didn't know anything about Shanahan and Lynch. That's when I first got hired. I stepped in there and I started asking questions on the sideline and I started watching them practice. And I said, you know what? He's getting a lot of fanfare as an offensive coach, but he's trying to build a line. He's really committed to building a defensive line. And look, I mean, that ended up being exactly what the 49ers have focused on. So for a team with an offensive, quote unquote, offensive minded head coach to put the kind of effort and investment into the defense, especially the front over the years, I think that's underscored what Shanahan is all about. And that is a coach trying to build a balanced football team. And Mike McDaniel, I mean, this is a master and apprentice kind of thing right now. Mike McDaniel, he's a newbie at this head coaching. He learned from Kyle Shanahan. Until he can show us that he can take a team with the Miami Dolphins and be more balanced and better than the 49ers, and he failed in his first attempt last year when they came to San Francisco. Until Mike McDaniel can do that, I don't think he's anywhere near Kyle Shanahan. I think that he's got potential, but again, it's like when Darth Vader fights Luke in The Empire Strikes Back. Darth Vader's fighting him with one hand. Until Mike McDaniel is able to get into Return of the Jedi form, we can't have this discussion. It's still Kyle Shanahan above his old pupil.
How awesome would it be to see Shanahan against McDaniel in Las Vegas with all that speed, all those weapons, all that fanfare in the Super Bowl? Man, I can't wait. And last one from the chat, Carson Taylor says, if we trade for someone, how would we pay Ayuk? Dave, you know the cap pretty well. They have $40-something million, most cap space. Lynch has already kind of indicated he'd like to roll it over. Could they trade for a player and roll over a gigantic chunk of that salary cap room and afford to retain Brandon Ayuk? Well, is it an either or is it, are they going to have to choose?
No, you could do both. They've left themselves options for both. I mean, if it's somebody like Surtain, I don't think the Denver is going to trade Surtain. But if it is, he's on a rookie deal. His cap hit would only be like $1 million.
It's not big
this year. Yeah. So there's no player that they're going to trade for that has a cap hit more than a few million. So even if it's $5 million, which I don't even know if there's somebody like that, then you still have 36 million to roll over. So it's definitely not an either or. They've left themselves, I call it option power, and that's what they've done. They enter this season with the ability to react in case somebody does become available, kind of like Christian McCaffrey became available last year. They can react from a financial standpoint because they have enough cap space to absorb a new contract, and they can react from a trade standpoint because they have a stockpile of picks that they could decide to send some of those to a team for a player. Nobody knows who that might be right now. People are just speculating, but we're not anywhere near the trade deadline yet. You still have to give this probably 2 or 3 more weeks before it really starts crystallizing. And the 49ers realize that, and they just want to make sure they arm themselves with as many options as possible entering trade season, which is October.
He's a great follow on Twitter, ladies and gentlemen. At Lombardi himself is the X. I can't say X. I'm always going to Twitter. It's the Twitter handle for Dave Lombardi. It's at Lombardi himself. And Dave's got over 100,000 followers on Twitter, which is just a fat number. Congratulations, by the way, on that milestone. That is huge.
It started Dave, nothing in 2017. It's crazy how 49ers.
No, seriously, you're thoroughly dominant as far as the tweeting goes. What do you got cooking for people who are Krueg show people that obviously almost, I bet you the bleed over is almost one, everybody who's on my channel is already probably subscribed to yours, but what do you got cooking? Today, obviously today is Tuesday. So we got Wednesday will be there. Thursday will be there. I usually don't go on Friday, but then there's the off day Saturday, game day Sunday. What are you putting out the rest of the week on your YouTube channel? Anything you'd like to promote going into Arizona's game?
So I got an article up on The Athletic that's going to be coming out tomorrow. This one's kind of cool. I worked on it over spring and the summer because I went out. I got married this past May. And
congratulations on that.
Yeah, thank you. Long story short, though, we went out to Prague, which is where I'm a dual citizen of here in the Czech Republic, and my mom is from the Czech Republic, from Prague. We went out there, and I came across the fact that there's a football team out in Prague, an American football team, mainly Czech guys.
Really?
They have up to 3 Americans they can have. And they just went 10-0 in the regular season this past summer. They are coached by a 49ers fan who's from near Eureka. His name is Spencer Ford. And to me, this was a hell of a cool story because when I started talking to some of the players and I was able to do the interviews in Czech, and they told me they started this team right after communism ended in 1989. They were able to start, doing Western things. They were able to start adopting sports from the U.S. that they weren't allowed to do before then. The star player in the NFL in the early 90s, when they first started playing football in Prague in the Czech Republic, was Joe Montana. So these guys, the original members of this team, idolized Joe Montana. And now a 49ers fan is their coach. And they just came off of a 10-0 season where they beat Vienna, who's their biggest rival, for the first time ever. So I was like, I have to write an article about these guys. Now, this is like a slightly smaller league where they play in the Austrian league against Vienna. And Vienna, their main rivals, they also play in the larger league, which is called the European League of Football. The European League of Football just wrapped up its season. Vienna, the team that Prague beat this year, made it all the way to the semifinals. The ELF, the European League of Football, was won by the Rhine Fire. The Rhine Fire is coached by
Jim Tomsula. I saw that.
Everything comes full circle because the first NFL Europe game is, I think it's Jacksonville against, I forgot who, the Texans. Somebody's something playing like on Sunday.
Is it London? Maybe Atlanta? I don't know. I've looked.
It's Atlanta. I think it's Atlanta. Yeah. So anyway, that's happening in Wembley on Sunday, but this ELF just finished up, and I've been working on this article for a while on this Prague football team because that has a bunch of personal ties, and I got to meet the team and talk to these guys in their language, and they just love the game and they love the 49ers out there in Central Europe, 9 time zones away. So that's dropping tomorrow. And there are a lot of cool nuggets in this story, and especially the fact they're coached by a 49ers fan. I think that just brings everything together.
Well, man, you do an awesome job. Keep it rolling. Thanks for jumping on. And maybe next week, will the Niners off day still be Tuesday?
Yeah, next week, if they play Sunday, then it's Tuesday. Yeah, so we'll do Tuesday.
We'll do Tuesday over at your place, and I'm loving doing the back and forth with you this year.
Home and home, baby.
The home and home, and welcome back. We'll see you down there maybe tomorrow.
Yeah, see you tomorrow. It's going to be fun this week. It's picking up, and next week I'm guessing we're going to be talking about a 49ers win over the Cardinals, and we're going to be previewing 49ers Cowboys. So it's going to be fun. Every week it's going to get better, because after that we're going to be talking 49ers Browns. And
yes,
trust me, mark my words, in 2 weeks 49ers Browns is going to seem a whole lot bigger than it seems to people right now. The Browns are rising. That defense is for real.
I mean, if I had to, and I've watched the Browns a couple times, and I love Nick Bosa, but I don't know that anybody's playing better than Myles Garrett right now. Myles Garrett is playing unbelievable football. So that is going to be a huge challenge for either Trent or Colton McKivitz for sure. Dave, great stuff, man. Have a great night, and we'll see you down in Santa Clara tomorrow. Oh, wait a second. Hit that button too soon.
Kick me out.
We'll see you down in Santa Clara tomorrow, and always good to rap with you, man. Thanks again.
Thanks, Larry. Have a good night.
You too. The great Dave Lombardi. Dave does a good job. Really good job. Conscientious, hard worker, and he has the story. He has the story. He tweets out, if you're a Niner fan and you're not following him on Twitter, what are you doing? Man, what are you doing? Because Dave puts out information in reams, and I'll gladly admit that I will steal some of his best stuff, including his whole breakdown of the Cardinals. I'll be using that on the 95.7 pregame show come Sunday for sure. All right, a couple more tweets. We got a couple more supers in there. We've got over 1,200, almost 1,300 people in the room right now. Let me just shout out our sponsors one last time. We're brought to you by Marin Auto Glass, marinautoglass.com, 415-883-3030. New York style Italian sausage. And, of course, Piggin' Up Pickle, the best barbecue in all of Northern California. Check them out in Marin County and in Corte Madera. They're Marin County, and in Emeryville. They're open 7 days a week from 11 a.m. to 8 p.m. or until they run out. And they have great food. Check it out. Tell them that Krueg sent you. And here's their spot in Marin.
So New York style sausage was started over 70 years ago. We are the largest producer of fresh Italian sausage on the West Coast.
What makes our sausage in New York style is really the recipe came from back east, from New York, from Connecticut.
If you look at all of our labels, there's maximum 4 or 5 ingredients, which we're really proud of.
There's no preservatives, no MSG, fresh in, fresh out.
The pork comes in fresh, goes out fresh. There's never any freezing throughout the process. We've always used fine quality cuts. We're never going to deter from that. It's one of the reasons why our sausage is so good. I guarantee you put our sausage up against anybody else's from a flavor standpoint, no one will beat it, hands down.
Hey, do yourself a favor and do me a favor. Go buy a package of the New York style Italian sausage. Guaranteed you will love it. Guaranteed.
Home stretch on the Krueg Show. Thanks to all you guys. Thanks to Dave. Dave's outstanding. We are sitting at 23,949 subs. So if you're one of the 1,000 people plus in the room, hit like and subscribe. If you hit that like, just more people find the shows in the algorithm. And if you hit subscribe and click that notification bell every time we go live, you'll get a notification that we're going live, and you don't have to miss a single minute of the Krueg Show. We've had over 1.2 million views of our content on this channel in the last 4 weeks alone, over 170,000 watch hours, and we've picked up almost 2,000 subs in the last 4 weeks alone. One more super chat, James Lopez. Funny how we need such a big sample size of Brock Purdy when the franchise signed Jimmy G to be the face of the franchise only after 5 starts. Well, I think that's maybe one has something to do with the other, right? The fact that the Niners may have jumped a little too soon on Jimmy G, and ultimately they saw regression. Maybe they're going to take it slow. Now, it really has more to do with just the fact that Brock is on a rookie deal, and there's no impetus. There's no impetus to do anything with Brock's deal until the time's right. But, man, they got a good one in Brock Purdy. I think everybody's starting to say it. Nate Burleson this week said he's a top 5 quarterback. Julian Edelman says he's the real deal. Well, he didn't say he was the real deal, but he just basically said that they struck oil, which made me think of the Beverly Hillbillies. We struck oil. We'll do a couple here in the chat that are not supers because I do care so much about the audience, and you guys have so many good things to say. Jimbo throws in, if you have a super you want to throw in, or if you have a chat you want to throw in there, I'll get to some of your best chats right here in the last couple minutes. By the way, in about a half hour, roughly 8:30, the great Raj from RSF 49ers is going to stop by on the channel. So we'll take a little break, get a glass of water, and come back and talk a little Niner football with the great Raj. Coming up bottom of the hour. Love Raj. He'll be by here in a bit. Jimbo says, thanks for having David Lombardi on, Larry. Larry and David combo, awesome. Thank you. Dave does a solid job. He absolutely does. Tim D says Lombardi's the best, along with Krueger, unbiased and fair and very informative. What else? Let's see. M. Patel says the two best in 49er coverage ain't something. It's Stats Guerrera and Al Sacco. Oh, okay. He's saying we're not the two best. Okay, M. Patel, very critical. He says Stats Guerrera and Al Sacco. They're strong and they know their shit. I got no problem with that. You know what? Everybody loves somebody else, right? Max Thunder drops in New York, Connecticut. Yes, you're watching the New York style Italian sausage ad very closely. The recipe comes from New York, Connecticut. The great Pasquale Battanti. Here we go. For those of you who love Pasquale.
We grew up with a Sunday dinner.
There you go. Maybe one more.
We grew up with a Sunday dinner.
I love that guy. Maybe one more.
We grew up with a Sunday dinner.
That's enough Pasquale right there. But thank you. We love New York style Italian sausage. And yeah, if you're going to the grocery store and you're buying New York style Italian sausage and you want to support the show, just snap a picture and send it to me on social media, and I'll make sure it gets to the owners of the company. They get lots of positive feedback from Krueg Show fans, and I always send it to them. Niners Nation says, Niners_Nation, Krueg, they say Jalen Hurts is elite, yet Purdy has him beat in passing yards, touchdowns, completion percentage, QBR, and 0 interceptions to Hurts' 3 interceptions. Does that make Purdy elite? You know, that's one right there. It's like, I've got Hurts down as better than Purdy, but I got to be honest. If they traded Purdy for Hurts, I probably would not be jumping up and down on that. Probably not. But I find them to be very, very similar. They're both men of faith, similar sized, more athletic than you think, better leaders than you think, really, really strong leaders. I like that. I like Jalen Hurts. In a lot of ways, I find Jalen Hurts very similar to Brock Purdy. What else here? Tim D said, sounds like the classic mobster, LOL. Calvin says, when do you see us losing this season, Krueg? You know, that's so hard to say. Let's take a look. I mean, the Philly game's going to be tough. That Cincinnati game is going to be tough. I would say, that's a ways down the road, Cincinnati. But that Cincinnati game, go look at that Cincinnati game. Cincinnati has tons and tons of rest advantage. I think the Niners go short week, flying cross country, if I'm not mistaken. And I think Bengals have like a +10 rest advantage day. That could be a loss. Absolutely. 10 days of advantage are a major advantage. Major advantage. Antonio says, Krueg, watching from Katy, Texas. You keep it 100. Keep it up. You know who's the pride of Katy, Texas? The great Eric Heitman, our good friend, former Niner offensive lineman. Very, very good guy. And he's from Katy, Texas. Katy, Texas. I've been through there. I've been through Katy, Texas. We got this one from Chris. Sorry, man, I can't buy your emotional outbursts. The fact is that the Niners are the best team in the NFL, but it is not about that right now. It's about getting the number 1 seed. All right, easy, Chris. You're going to be all right. Things are going to be okay. Things will be okay. What else? We got M. Patel calling people fascist. Okay. Let's just try to get away from the name calling. We've seen enough name calling today. What else? Donovan, what's your take on Andrew Baggerly? I don't have one. We'll just leave it at that. David Muschek says Purdy. The entire Purdy Ohana rocks. Not sure what that even means. Wally Lama says the pride of Katy, Texas is riffraff. Hopefully that's somebody. I'm not sure who that is. There we go. We got this one from M. Patel. A little factoid. Fact. Only one team in the NFL are both top 5 in offense and defense with a top 5 quarterback and passer rating, and it is, drum roll please, the 49ers. Good stuff. Landon Hansen says, Krug, what about Tristan Wirfs? Yeah, if Tampa falls out of it, I'd take Tristan Wirfs. I definitely would. We got this one. D. Breezy says, homie sounds angry with his life. Not sure who we're talking about there, but I think I know. Tim Donaghy's Krug knocking on the door to 24,000 subs. How about that? We're 49 away from 24,000 subs. Actually, we just got 2 more, so now we're 27 away from 4,000 subs. And we've only been doing this since March of 2022, and here we are. It's September of 2023, and we're almost at 24,000 subs. So that's all you guys, man. That's all you guys. We put out great content. I think, at least, I'm proud of the content that we put out on this channel on a regular basis. My son is grinding, working really hard, going to school at Cal Poly and helping his dad run this channel. The great Len Dempsey has worked really hard on this channel. He's helped us immeasurably. All these guys, from Grant Cohn to David Lombardi to Jesse Naylor to Vish Kumaran to Raj to Jack Hammer to the coach, these guys are fantastic. And I love every single one of these guys. And they do great work on the channel. We do great live streams, and I really love talking to these guys on a regular basis. So I can't live stream with everybody. I got to kind of pick and choose who I live stream with. But as far as I'm concerned, those guys are the top of the heap. Matt Barrows, I'd have Matt on every day if I could. He's that good. We've got this one from Max Thunder. He said 30,000 by Thanksgiving. That would be nice. M. Patel says, great work, Krug. Smash the like button, everybody. Smash the like button. Calvin says, we appreciate you, Krug. M. Patel says, like the Giants stuff after Barrows the other day. It's so funny. I talked Giants the other day after Barrows, and M. Patel saying he loved it. There were other people like, I turned that off. I got a couple messages. As soon as you started talking Giants after football, I turned that off. So you know what? It's to each their own. What's the saying? You can please some of the people some of the time. You just can't please all the people all the time. I try, but you can't always do it. Monty says, Krug, can you see Denver left tackle Garrett Bowles as a possible trade target before the deadline? Could plug him in at right tackle. Bleacher Report did a whole breakdown, guys, on who the, every team in the league and what their primary weakness was. And I swear to you, I went through the entire article with a fine-tooth comb. There had to be 10 teams out of the 32 whose primary weakness is offensive tackle. So, and then I watch McGlinchey just get torched. Oh, my God, and poor McGlinchey. Maybe the smartest move of the offseason for the 49ers was to not pay Mike. And I like Mike. Mike's a good dude. But he ain't worth that money. He is not worth that money. So, there you go. I think it was wise of them to go with Colton McKivitz. Did a pretty good interview yesterday with Sam Darnold and talked a little bit about his observations as the backup quarterback on Brock Purdy. And You know what? I really liked it, and I looked down. Excuse me, at the YouTube counter today. I believe that Sam Darnold interview that we did yesterday in the locker room, I think has like 20, maybe more. It might be more than 25,000. Is it possible we have 25,000 views on that? We just put it out yesterday. Literally just put it out. Yeah, we have almost 30,000 views on the interview of Sam Darnold in the locker room yesterday. And Sam's a good dude. You know, it's like a tough deal. This guy's got a lot of pride. And yet I'm asking him about Brock Purdy and his observations. And he's got to kind of bite his lip because he's a competitor. He wants to be the starter. But you know what? He's a good dude. And he said a lot of interesting things. And I think Sam's really happy. And I'm eager to see. Hopefully we don't see him because that means Purdy goes down. But I feel good about what Sam's going to do when he gets in there. Sione says, Krug, I'm not a Niner fan. Okay, it's all right. Hey, you know what? You don't have to be a Niner fan to like the Krug Show. We're going to talk NFL. We're going to talk Giants baseball. We're going to talk a lot of Warrior basketball this year. So it's all good. It's all good. It's mostly Niner stuff, and I'll be in Santa Clara tomorrow. Oh, that's what I wanted to get to before we get out of here. Let me give you guys the schedule of what we got cooking. WW, this is great. You don't want 30,000 subs. 30 rhymes with turdy. Thank you, Mike Florio. D2 says, how about getting Tommy T on your show? I can ask him. Tommy T's probably not happy with me because I highlighted that the KMBR wasn't doing great in the ratings, and I shouldn't have. Because Tommy's never done anything but treat me and my family incredibly well, and it was small of me to put that out there that, oh, you know, I'm doing great and they're struggling, but, you know, it has nothing to do with Tommy T. So I'll reach out to him. I'll reach out to him. I love him. I love Lori. I love his family. You know, Tommy, the show, we didn't get great ratings and it didn't work out, but I love him like a brother. I really do. He's a really, really good dude. You know, we went through, I lost both my parents in the year plus that we worked together. You know, he had family tragedy. You know, we laughed together, we drank together, we cried together. You know, we broke bread multiple times together. I hold Tommy in the highest of regards. So, absolutely. I'll reach out to him and see if we can get him on. Emily Pasqua says, love your locker room interviews, Krug, especially with the lesser-known players. Yeah, I hope so. You know, I hope you guys are enjoying that because I think every one of these guys, I talked to Isaiah Oliver yesterday. Isaiah Oliver is really cool. Really cool. There's just so many good interviews. Drake Greenlaw's a great interview. Drake Jackson's a great interview. Demo's a great interview. Lenore. George Odom's a phenomenal interview. I really enjoy going in there and talking to the guys. Ray McLeod is one of my favorites. Aaron Banks is one of my favorites. You know, there's just a lot of really cool Niners, and it's just fun. To me, that's fun. And sometimes I'll go and hover around the most popular guys like everybody else in the group deal, but I don't want to do that. I don't want to ask one question in a group of 20 people. I'd rather go to the guy who's standing there. I'd rather go interview Oren Burks and ask him 10 questions and give you guys a little bit more insight into what makes Oren Burks tick. And I realize everybody wants to talk to Fred. I get it. Kittle, McCaffrey. It makes sense. I get it. Niner Gang says, takes a real man to do that, Larry. Not sure what he's talking about. To say that I made a mistake and was critical? Yeah, well, it was stupid of me. It was stupid. Never get boastful. That's the thing. Never get boastful. Always remember, that's what my late father taught me. It's like, it's not about how you are when things are going your way. It's about how you are when things aren't going your way. It's not how many times you get knocked down in this world. It's not how many times people who are petty try to put you down. It's how you respond to it that really is defining. And I love my father to death. He believed in my career path. He encouraged me to go to chase my dreams. I don't want to start crying right now, but I miss him every day. And I'm just thankful that I had a father who encouraged me to dream a dream and then go out there and live it. And if there's anything I could say, I'm not one of these tell you how to raise your kids guys. I'm not. I have 4 of my own. I've got strong feelings about it, but I'm not going to tell you how to raise yours. But encourage your kids to dream. Encourage your kids to have a dream about something that they love to do, and then fuel their dream and support their dream and encourage their dream. I see it with Grant and Lowell. Lowell is that way with Grant. He encouraged Grant to dream a dream and to pursue it. George Krueger was like that with me, and my brother and my 2 sisters. He wanted us to have a dream. Go dream about what you want to do. My brother dreamt of being a judge, a lawyer, then a judge. My sister dreamt about being a lawyer. I had another sister who dreamt about being a teacher. And my dad was just all about it. All about, the one thing you couldn't say to him is you couldn't say, hey, how's it going, Lair? Whatever. He hated whatever. He didn't want to hear whatever. He wanted you to have strong conviction about what you were, who you were, what you were, and where you were going. But he also, there were times where I could have gone on this way or that way, and he said, no, this is what I think you ought to do. And he just kind of artfully molded and encouraged each one of his children to chase their dreams without being heavy-handed with it. And I'm trying to do the same with my own kids. Monty says, this segment of the Krueg Show is brought to you by Pig in a Pickle. Yes, Pig in a Pickle. All right, let's see. Let me get to the bottom of the chat here. We've got this one from Wedema. He says, you think we get an O-line player from the Broncos? I think it's possible. I think, there's 4 or 5 teams that are going to fall out of the race. The only thing about it is it's like really good offensive linemen don't really go anywhere. The guy that is super intriguing to me would be the Notre Dame guard in Indy if Indy kind of fell out of it, because he is dominant. Jesus M says, Larry, do you talk to Rod Brooks? I saw him in the press box a few weeks ago and said hi to him. But I it's funny. Rod lives up in the North Bay, and I rarely, if ever, see him. Sometimes I see him at Niner games. He's doing a great job on TV. Catch the post-game Niner show. Rod does a really good job, and I've seen him jump on there, NBC Sports Bay Area, with in some of the baseball talk. Rod's a good guy. Two wonderful kids, wonderful wife, and he's a talented guy. Was it I13 the underscore, or I3 the underscore I3? I like you, Larry, but you're effing lazy. You're effing lazy. I love you, boy, but you're fucking lazy. Oh, we got some new T-shirts coming up, by the way. Go check out the store on YouTube, and you can see what we got there. We got some really good new shirts that we're going to come up with here in the next week that we'll have for you. Kyle McKiernan says Larry is the man. Patrick Sheehan drops a But Larry. Okay, well, since you're through a But Larry in there, here we go. Wednesday night. Okay, here's the schedule for the week, and then we're getting out of here. So yesterday we were on with Matt Barrows. Today, Dave Lombardi. Coming up here in about 15 minutes, the great Raj will be in the house. Tomorrow I'll be down in Santa Clara. I'm also going to join Damon Bruce on his show at 11 a.m., and then tomorrow night at roughly 6 o'clock, maybe 7, the Kevin Krug call-in show with my son, the great Kevin Krueger. After a day in Santa Clara, I'll have some stuff from Shanahan tomorrow, open locker room stuff tomorrow. Then I'll be back doing the call-in show. I love the call-in show. It's probably my favorite show of the week. Thursday, we'll be down in Santa Clara for practice at 1 o'clock. Steve Wilkes, Chris Forster, Brock Purdy will all be on the podium. We'll go into the locker room. Jesse Naylor and I will hook up Thursday night for the big show, minus Vish. Vish is on vacation this week, but me and Jesse at 6:30 Thursday night. Friday morning at 10:45, Jack Hammer will be in the house. Also Friday afternoon, we'll do some Arizona Cardinals interviews with some of their media people. Saturday at 9 a.m., the coach stops by. Sunday morning, join me for the 95.7 The Game pregame show, the first of its kind this year. Me and Lo Neal from the Santa Clara Hilton. That's going to be from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. So if you're down at the game in Santa Clara, stop by and see me and Lo. Same church, same pew. I love me some Low Neal. And then the post-game show with Kev and JD and Baller and maybe Danny and Rye and maybe Damon jumping in, and hopefully all of you after the Niners roll to 4-0. But the Patrick Sheehan is talking about But Larry, and that means it's time for our hit of Johnny C. Let's go to Johnny C.
Let me try, Larry. Okay, so Larry, here's the deal. Larry, honestly, Larry. No, but Larry, I gripe here though, Larry. Here, Larry.
And now
Larry. I mean, Larry, but here's the thing, Larry.
What do you think?
I think they're going to sign Jason Peters.
How old is he?
He's 40, but and Larry, Larry. I mean, Larry, I wish I could, Larry.
Johnny, we're going to have to jump. Maybe Johnny C will be on tomorrow night. There you go. Couple last ones. Waveware says, no lazy talk with the elder Krueg. No, George didn't want to hear that. M. Patel says, Grant helped Krueg. Yeah, he absolutely did. Kyle McKiernan says, Larry, your footprint in this state is huge. Appreciate that, Kyle. Appreciate that a lot. Thanks to all you guys. I think that's going to do it for us. Is there anybody else in the chat we want to hit on? What else? We got a few. We got a bunch of people in here. Bomber T. Can we hear some bulky talk, Krug?
Bomber, I've got a bad ACL, and I'm thinking about drafting nothing but guys who have torn ACLs. It shows that they can fight through some adversity. You know what I'm talking about, Lowry?
There you go. Wedama says, Larry, you're a legend. For real. Patrick Sheehan. But Larry. All right, that's going to do it for us. Okay, that one is, we already read that one. All right, that's going to do it for us. Hey, good stuff, guys. Thanks to Dave. Thanks to all of you guys. Check in. Raj is going to stop by in 14 minutes. We'll talk more Niners next. It's going to be good. Stick around. The Krueg Show. Have a nice night.
Yeah, never met a man I've been scared of. Careful, you gon' get exactly what you asked for. Here for whatever you bring me, getting handled. I answer to no one, I don't need to